Hi, everyone, and welcome back to On the DL. I am joined today by Claudia Chan. Claudia is a life coach. She is a New York Times celebrated author of This is How We Rise, and also podcast host of How We Rise. Claudia is an entrepreneur. She has several businesses, but a couple that I know we're going to get into today. For sure, we're going to talk about She Global and B2B. And I have to tell everyone that, Claudia, I found you, of course. How do we all find each other these days on social media? But you came into my feed so organically, and I'm such a believer of fate. I live my life that way. Everything happens for a reason, and I was having a particularly horrible morning that day, and I thought to myself, I'm getting off all social media. I'm turning the television off and I'm going for a walk. But I thought, 5 more minutes of this torture. And there you were. And I thought, who is this? Who is this woman? And if I tell you you are one of my go-tos now every day, I want to, it's almost as if I need you to speak to me every single day. So I'm so honored that you said, yes, I'd love to talk to you on your show. So welcome to On the DL, and thank you for being here. I am also going to thank you straight out right away for being one of the biggest advocates and allies I have ever witnessed on any topic ever. Not just because it's personal to me, but ever. You are the quintessential advocate. I've never met or seen anybody like you before. How do you do that?
So I am a entrepreneur, as you mentioned, and been in the people development inspiration space for the last 20 years. I founded a conference called She Summit. I wrote a book called This Is How We Rise, as you mentioned. But my greatest passion in life is people and pouring into people and gathering people. And when October 7th happened, as a Christian, even though I have a secular brand and business, like I operate in the secular space, but I am a Christian. And as a person of faith, that is what inspires my leadership work. That is what shapes my character. And it's what provides me this internal value system. And
Mm.
when October 7th happened, I expected the world to scream the way that they did for George Floyd in 2020, the way they did with Me Too movement, or any other social issue for that matter. And week after week, the silence was just crazy to me. And I had started speaking up, but then I just felt this responsibility. And it wasn't even a head mind thing or a head thing, it was a heart thing. I was just pulled in. There wasn't even a question. And so I would say that my internal value system overpowers my head or my rationale, if anything. And I really listened to God in that way. And that's what pulled me in. And that's what has kept me in. And if anything, I'm realizing I didn't expect to be for my life to get hijacked and to basically be make allyship almost a full-time job. But I cannot take
Mhm.
my gas pedal, obviously, because there's so few non-Jewish people who are speaking up.
Does that surprise you?
It does. It does. And it's interesting because, I'm born and raised in Manhattan, New York City. And so I just grew up around Jewish people. They're my best friends. Like I think about Lauren Reiner and Joy Grossman, like my two best friends, like sisters, and when this, and in college, I think about my friend Ellen Shulman, and I think about, yeah, I mean, I just grew up around so many Jewish friends who were like family, like their parents, and going to the bar mitzvahs, and so maybe that was my bubble, and so, but that's Jewish friends and family have always been such a part of my life, and so when that happened, it was like, it's like when any group starts getting attacked, yeah, damn straight, I'm going to like jump out and protect them. I'm going to protect my family. And so there just wasn't even a question, And so maybe my world, maybe because my world is so filled with Jewish people, I just assumed that the world would jump in. But my husband is actually from Georgia. He's from Peachtree City, Georgia, and he went to Auburn University. So it's like an SEC, like Southern culture, very Christian based. And he didn't grow up around Jewish people. And then, I've come to learn that there's only around 16 million Jewish people in the world. 0.2% of the world's population is Jewish, and predominantly they live in America or Israel. And so, but I didn't realize, like, yeah, the concentration of Jewish people, like in LA and in New York, and so maybe I was surprised because I was in that bubble. But yeah, it's just hasn't even been like, it's at the twilight zone. I've been calling it the twilight zone, and maybe that's because I am biased in the sense of like, that's been so much of my community. But I think again that people are conflating, like and not having boundaries in this moment, because at the end of the day, any innocent group of people that get attacked out of nowhere, when October 7th did happen, me supporting the Jewish community is its own separate siloed thing. It doesn't
Right.
mean
Mm-hmm.
that I don't care about civilian innocent lives getting
Of
killed.
course.
It's
Mm-hmm.
and they're separate things, and human beings are allowed to have separate feelings and emotions at the same time.
See, that's where I think that this is where your advocacy has come in on so many levels, and speaks to so many people, not just to Jewish people and to the Jewish community, although I have shared you with everybody I know. I think that it speaks to all peoples, because the greater you, all of us who want peace can support everyone. It's sort of like the idea where I've always said, marry everything, right? Merry Christmas, Merry Hanukkah. Like, we celebrate it all. You can celebrate everything. You can love everybody. You can hate everybody. You can choose that. But why can't people still want to support both religions, both international communities? Why do you have to choose a side and pick so much hate? And that has been very confusing for me. And I didn't understand the silence. I still don't understand the silence. It's been so deafening and so debilitating. The silence kind of set me off at first, but then I thought, it's because people don't understand. They just don't
Right.
understand. They don't understand how triggering this is. But then it became the words that
So
came from people that I loved.
so as a coach, and an advisor to so many large organizations, leaders, and also, individuals, I think I'll maybe put that hat on. And by the way, I do have my
Yeah.
battle hat on,
Yes. Yes.
which actually is very, I like, it's a brand that came out of Mosaic, Los Angeles, which is an amazing church in Los Angeles. And Battle Ready was, like, as a person of faith, they say, like, once you are through, like, when it comes to leadership in life and affecting change, and if you decide to become a leader, right, which is not just living in your life in the world, but leading your life for the world. And that's a lot of what my book, This Is How We Rise,
You
is
have to say
about.
that again. You have to say that again. That was very
That
powerful.
that that we're born into this world just thinking we're living our life in the world, and our goal is to protect ourselves and get good jobs and provision and safety for us. But at a certain point you learn, and it could happen at 20, 30, 40, 50 or older, that, wow, wait, I've gotten this stuff so that I don't just live my life in the world, but so that I can lead my life for the world. Right. So we're
Wow.
living and we're gaining so that we can give and serve. Like, that is the purpose of this short earthly time that we have on earth. And so a lot of my, my leadership work, my culture innovation work, again, people create culture and culture creates people, right? So there's like, personal development and inner work is is the number one leadership that everybody in this lifetime is here to really learn and do. And because again, leadership is an inside job. So I'm going to put on that hat, but Battle Ready, the topic of this is that, if people are out there trying to impact society and lead something good that's outside of themselves, what precedes every battle is another one. right? Even if you think about success or however you define success, it's, you're going to go through trials, but it's the trials that actually build us and grow us. And so we always have to be battle ready, because that's where God chooses extraordinary challenges for those who are destined for extraordinary impact.
We have a
Hi.
guest. Hi. Look at our guest.
I'm so sorry.
No, of course. We love guests on the DL, especially little sick ones.
Can you go tell Daddy that that you're not allowed to be here right now? Well, you know that already. Also, you can have my iPad, okay? Okay, go get the iPad and close my door. There's one on the kitchen counter. I
That
mean,
iPad is,
if there's
no,
gonna
I
be
mean the iPad. It's a savior. It was my savior when my kids were
oh,
little.
sure.
Yeah,
If there's gonna be an interruption, at least it's a cute one.
exactly. So cute.
Mike can decide whether or not he wants to edit that out.
Right. No, 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 no. I love that. So I want to ask you about the idea
I
around,
wanted to, sorry, I wanted to
yeah,
just sort of go into sort of the two different things that you talked about. So number
right.
one is that, because we were talking about why can't people choose different social issues at the same time to support, and
Hmm.
just choosing sides. And I think that sorry, I'm just, you're editing this, right?
No, we're not going to edit this part. But we can.
Okay.
We can take this out if you'd like. For sure we
Okay.
can. Yeah.
Well, okay, let me start here. In terms of all the different emotions that people are going through right now, the Jewish community is going through in the roller coaster of events. I think it's always really important to name the various emotions. And a lot of leadership, I always say, is first mastering your internal mental and emotional health. So there's 60,000 thoughts a day that create emotions, right? And so number one, October 7th happens, and there's just shock that like this just happened. And then, so that is an emotion and a feeling. Then there goes to fear and terror, right? Like, am I safe? Are my kids safe? And day after day, week after week, you're seeing what's happening, and the violence and the riots and the attacks. And then there's a feeling and emotion of betrayal of the
Hmm.
science. And so, and of just, so, and then there's the feeling of just lack of control, because you're unable to detach from social media. You're unable to, to get a grip, to, manage the day to day of like getting through, like all boundaries have been taken down. And so to recognize that you're in a season and an initial period right now of emotional roller coaster, like this emotional roller coaster experience. And as soon as you consciously can acknowledge that and say, I have permission, that's okay. But at a certain point, I am now going to step out of that emotion and move into, my clarity and my talents and skills of a business person, of a creative person, of a professional person. And I am going to now step into my power and into my clarity of how I want to now manage around this, right? And yes, I'm going to get my kids to school, and I'm going to, check in with my job, but like, it's like, have the emotions, but then get into your conscious brain and be like, okay, now what can I do about it? Right. And
So
like,
I love that you say that. I love that you say that because um, I will tell you, as a Jewish woman, I have been debilitated with both fear and betrayal, debilitated by fear, um, and trying to be very strong for my family and my children as the matriarch of this house. And as a role as a Jewish mother, that's what we do. We try to be very, very strong. We're taught that at a very young age, that is our role in the house. And it's part of our culture. So I'm trying to be this strong woman for my family, but I've been debilitated by fear, and then I've been debilitated by betrayal. And I've been a little bit silent myself until I had and I'm sorry if I use this term loosely or in the wrong context, but I had to come to Jesus,
okay.
literally, where I had this epiphany and I thought, I have a voice and I have to use my power. And I don't care if I have 5,500 followers or 55,000 or 5 million. Every time I say something, there is action. Somebody sees it, somebody feels it, somebody is ready for battle. And I've started to inspire others to start using their voices. And so I thought, who would be the best person to speak to? Because I've taken a few weeks off from interviewing and from talking with people because I've really been in my space. And that's why I thought you would be the best person to sort of set me off again, to
Yeah.
light that fire and make me feel like I can do this. And that's when you just said, use your power, that just resonates with me. I don't need to be the biggest, loudest advocate in the world, but I need to do something.
Right. Well, I always talk about leading change from where you are. And what's interesting is right now, all the Jewish people, and I've had thousands of people, not just Jewish people, but Catholics and Christians and
Mhm.
non-religious or faith people who have literally said, thank you so much for publicly, speaking up, speaking for the Jewish community. And it really got me thinking about, people are internally confused, or their worlds have been turned upside down. And it actually, this is the work that I do. Like, this is what my book is about. This is what I created something called wholeness coaching and whole self leadership. But the whole premise, the whole framework of my curriculum and my coaching work is there's various modules, but visioning is the first one, is really starting from a place of like, if you didn't care about what people thought about you, and you didn't, worry about money or reputation or anything, and you were just like, what is the highest vision of what I could be doing and who I would become, using my platform, which could be a job as a graphic designer, to having a podcast and a media platform, to being a lawyer, a corporate lawyer, like, is like, what could I be doing that would make my work purposeful? How do I serve my talents in a way, again, whatever your skills are, whatever your talents and skills are, for a purpose, right? And so visioning well-being for your family, like, what is that whole self ideal vision, is where I start my clients with. But the second one is mindset and healing, because now, what is the programming? What are the 60,000 thoughts? What's the story that's consuming your mind every single day? That's creating your emotion, right? That's creating fight, flight, freeze, which is the reptile brain, or keeping me in my prefrontal cortex, which is my rational brain. Like, so the thing is that I actually learn the programming of what people are thinking and feeling, and what their unconscious or conscious insecurities are. Oh, I can't, if I do this, then what if this happens, right? Or like, then I'm going to lose these people, and people, what are they going to think about me? Or, or like, am I going to lose my
Exactly.
job? Like, what are those fears, right? Because really,
Exactly.
society, it's why I created, even before this religious war, or this Middle East war, I created, because I basically said, we need to, like, burnout is so big anyway in the workplace, especially for women. Because last decade we've had a feminist movement, and yeah, more women have taken on more income, like more roles, more leadership, all that great stuff. But then all the household chore, like, none of that has to moved off their plate. So now they're
Right.
getting sick, divorces are happening. Like, that's been my work the last decade, is like setting the patterns of high achieving women. And anyway, so the thing is that this is the time to master and understand your inner world, so that you can proactively step out into your true calling and your true, who you're here to actually become. And I actually believe that God is always for us, and never underestimate God's planning and time, and I think that this time right now in history, like, this whole thing happening, like, I feel like people are being called. Like, it's like, if you
So
think
I want to
about
ask
just,
you about that. I want to
please.
ask you about that. I want to ask about your calling, because people will be listening to this, and I want to know why or how we can promote more healing by promoting more advocacy. Because as you said, you are not Jewish, your husband's not Jewish, you do not come from a Jewish background. And what is it that we can share with people to promote peace and advocacy?
Well, one thing that I started sharing was don't be a voice follower, be a voice starter. And if
Mm.
you look at historically, even with Lean In or Me Too or Black Lives Matter and the Great Recession, like all the different social movements that have happened over the last decade, um, it's oftentimes people jump on a bandwagon, or the future's female or whatever it is, or like LGBTQ rights. Everything people will jump on the bandwagon when other people are doing it, right? So it's easy to sort of be in the crowd and be like, yeah, 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 it's a trend,
But
and so
but Claudia, wait, I have to interrupt you for a second.
it's
There is no Jewish bandwagon.
I
There,
know,
people are not jumping on a bandwagon to advocate for this tiny little community that is being terrorized on every corner of the earth right now. There is no bandwagon for us. There was a bandwagon for everyone else but us. Like, I was there for every movement, every single thing, person
most
I had on the
most of my Jewish
show.
friends have, yes,
And now I have no one,
I know,
nobody but my own community, which is devastating.
yeah.
I don't know any other word to say that this has been so devastating. I'm like, where are my friends from 25 years? Where
Right.
are my Christian friends?
And
Where are
so
my
people,
Arab
so
friends? Where
people
are they?
do, yeah. So people do what feels safe. And that's my point of, I wanted to say, don't be a voice follower, be a voice starter, because it just acknowledges the fact that oftentimes in our activism, we do what feels safe. We do it when everybody else is doing it, right? Which is really
I
no different.
see.
And that's obviously happening in the college campuses and with the younger generation right now. Like we're seeing that, right? It's like, oh, this is trending. Like I was getting a facial from a 24-year-old, and I'm like, have you heard of what's going on in the Middle East? She's like, oh my God, yeah, I banned Starbucks. And I'm like, why'd you ban Starbucks? Oh, because they're supporting Israel. I'm like, I don't support genocide for Palestinians. But she knew nothing. She didn't even know about October 7th, right? And so it's just there's so many things here. But I think that the answer to this is, and it's so converging also with my work and wholeness work, because I say that, the goal of life is not to sort of attain this limitless amount of achievement or success. It's actually to define what wholeness means to you. And so much of that is being wholly who you are and not caring about what culture thinks. So it's actually the way that we get more people to speak out is to really connect them to their inner core and value system. And this is actually what I was going to say earlier,
Hmm.
back when you were like, why can't people have different emotions at the same time? And it really comes down to, this is not even about faith. This is about core character. This is about, like, if you have the character, and good character, because all roads lead to character, right? Like internally, are you a good person? Are you an honest person? Are you a kind person? Do you do the right thing? And so all of that is an internal value system and a value set. And that's really, and sometimes we have to, and that's what leadership is. Somebody just posted, leadership is oftentimes doing what is unpopular. It's doing things and getting a lot of negative feedback, but you do it because internally your compass says this is the right thing to do. So people, if anything, leadership has to be your inside job. You have to listen to your inner core values. And there are millions of people out there who actually do support the Jewish community and are pro-Israel, but they just don't. I mean, even typically, and then especially conservatives, like they're not typically going to speak up because historically of how canceled you might get, right? And so, but so this is a time where it's a test of character and it's a test of values. Can your internal value system outperform, or outmatter, what what your reputation is? And I think the more people that can plug into that internal compass, that is when we're going to start seeing more allies.
Hmm. I'm almost left speechless, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, all the things and all the days and hours that go by, and I don't say enough. I don't do enough. I know within my community, but not in the bigger picture. Part of that is I keep coming back to the word fear. Part of it is fear. I can tell you that I have lived with microaggressions my entire life,
Me too.
and I'm sure exactly. And I've sloughed it off. I haven't made a big deal about it. I just usually tell myself, silly, they're uneducated, uninformed. They don't mean to ask me those questions. They're so offensive, but they don't mean it.
Yeah.
But they
So
mean it now. But
yeah,
they
well,
mean it now.
and sometimes God's got to throw such a big bomb on the on the planet to wake us up and
Well,
actually bring us out.
do you not think that bomb has gone off?
That's what I'm saying.
I
And I
do.
think that, and I truly
Mhm.
think that that's what's happening right now. I actually think the world is starved for, just this deeper internal value system. And, they say you can choose comfort or you could choose courage, but you can't choose both.
I don't want to get too religious or deep about religion, but when you said that, God has sort of, this bomb has gone off, and historically in our Torah, we have been victimized over and over and over again, and we always rise, and we lose many, but we continue to rise. And so we seem to always be the victims, the scapegoats. We take it. We take the
Well,
blows.
I wrote something that, as the chosen people originally, like in the beginning of history in the Bible, in the Old Testament,
Mhm.
is that, like this is a moment to, yes, go through all the emotions you need to go through, but then step out into your conscious mind and into your power and become the change makers that the future and the world needs, right? And stay so high. When they go low, you stay high, as Michelle Obama says. And
I'm not a
that
fan of hers right now. I'm mad at her. Sorry. I'm very mad
that's
at her.
fine, but the ultimately, like, stay high. And that's the thing about the
Mhm.
Jewish people, right? There is a level of integrity and there's a level of character, and so high that you become like, this event turns this 0.2 population of the world into the change makers of the world. And that would be, as a preacher, like as somebody who like speaks and pours into people, and I'm not officially a preacher, but like, that's what inspires me, right? Is pouring into people, is filling your cup so that you can step out and impact that change. So let's reframe for a second and talk about a divorce, right? Let's just say that, you've
My
got,
favorite topic of the world.
by the way, I have so many clients that come to me. It could be like, I want to write a book, I want to launch this business, I want to scale my thing, or I'm getting a divorce or whatever, internal imposter syndrome. Like, the internal work is always the same, no matter what it is that you want to create or align with. But if a divorce happened out of nowhere, which has currently impacted one of my clients, who has 3 young kids, and you're feeling all those emotions. You're feeling broken, you're feeling betrayed, you're feeling devastated, you're feeling afraid. You're feeling all these different emotions at the same time, right? But or you get fired from your job, or like something, like a disaster, your house burns down, or like something happens, right? But then what is a healthy parent going to say to you? What is a coach going to say to you, or an advisor? Be like, okay, cry it all out, do what you need to do, but then sit back up and step out there and be the greatness that you are. Like, you've come this far because of the talents and the skills and the strength and the resilience that is already inside of you, right? So this is like, it's like turning any obstacle into an opportunity. It's turning any pain into purpose, right? So it's like, yeah, cry all you want, be an emotional mess, but then like, wipe those tears, and we turn this pain into something positive that can impact others. And I do believe that that's where, all the greatest artists, creators, innovators of the world, they all have gone through the pattern. There is, they've all gone through a massive trial. They've all gone through massive adversity. And that's how we need to, this is how I would reprogram your mind and your emotions, because that's what we need right now.
Pain into purpose. I love that. I've heard you speak about that before. That actually inspired me last week to say something. I was in a lot of pain. I was feeling so betrayed by some old friends, old colleagues, and I had to say something.
Yeah.
Because I thought what they are saying and what they are doing is so hurtful that they don't even know how hurtful they are being. So I had to take that pain and make it a purposeful moment for myself.
And also because we want, this message to reach a lot of, people in your community is also for some people, look, it might have taken 3 weeks to speak up, 1 week, or it could be 3 months or a year to speak up. And that's okay. That's
Mm.
okay. And it's just, listen, if somebody is going through a major loss and a major devastating life event, you know, beating yourself up on your emotions is not helpful, right? So I am trying to pull, like, a lot of what I try to do also is pulling people right out of like the unconscious brain and those emotions to get you thinking. That outside in perspective helps you regulate yourself so that you can again align. And this is where we are being developed right now, right? Our courage is being exercised. Like, obstacles will, like, develop our endurance, our resilience, our courage. And so everybody's being called to courage right now.
What has surprised you the most around the last 2 months? I mean, I'm going to share with you the two things that have surprised me really the most. Um, One is the level of anti-Semitism in the world. Like I live a Jewish life and I just don't feel anti-Semitism.
And that's
And
its
I
own
live in
container of shock.
I mean that just, I live in Toronto. This is a metropolis.
Very
We have
diverse.
every walk of life in this city, which is why I love it so much. And I really am shocked by it. People keep saying, "Why are you
So
so shocked? You shouldn't be so shocked." But I want to tell you the second. That was the first. The second, and this is so so deep, deep, deep in my core, and I don't know how to even weigh this with anti-Semitism, but I feel like it's almost the same. The lack of support and acknowledgement from women's groups. I am so beyond flipped out. That's why when I just said I'm mad at Michelle Obama, I am mad at her. I think that she's been
oh yeah.
poor during this. But I don't understand how Israeli Jewish women don't count. I the second that October 7th came to be, and we started to hear the gruesome, revolting details of the terrorist attack, when we started to speak to our friends and family in Israel, who started to give us firsthand accounts of what was happening, not just what you're hearing on the news and reading in social media and so forth. The first thing I thought was, well, we as women, us international women, will be able to help the women of Israel. And it became the complete reverse of that. We're just starting to see it turn a little now. It's not getting apologies, but we're starting to feel women's organizations coming out a little bit more with the UN's very pathetic statement the other day. And I have been so shocked by that. I don't know. I don't know why I'm so shocked by that, but those are the two main, like, collectively, I would say. What has shocked you the most?
So again, back to what I'm hearing, right, is there's the shock, like, first of all, getting and naming the emotions. There's the shock of the anti-Semitism that um, clearly that has just the hatred and the prejudices and the things that have been said and done, right? So that is one emotional container. And then there's this betrayal, right? And then there is almost a third, like, betrayal because friends aren't speaking up, and especially when you've advocated for every issue. And then the third one is almost like because, like, there's so many things, right? Like, because of rape and the way that they raped these women and tortured these women. So then that's almost like another container of like, we're less valuable, like, wait, so this is like a whole other level. It's not even like, it's beyond even anti-Semitism. It's like, oh, so like, our Jewish women are less valuable, like, than other categories of women or kinds of women, right? Dimensions of diversity of women. So acknowledging that. So I would say, because I'm trying to break these up in pieces to help us all understand this a little bit more, And especially like maybe I have a little bit more objective, like because perspective because I'm out of it. Like I'm seeing it from an outsider because I'm not Jewish. So I think that this is such a psychological war in many ways because number
100%.
one, when Hamas we know is the core enemy, right? Is the terrorist organization that did what they did. They broke the ceasefire. And they've been planning this for years, just like 9/11 was planned for years, right? They're funded by the Islamic government, Iran. And so it's they were ahead of this, like the whole strategy. Because once they knew that Israel was going to defend itself and attack, and defend themselves by to release the hostages, and they knew the longer they keep the hostages, the more they're going to bomb and use those. They're using those innocent civilian lives as human shields, which we know that. And so I think that by showing all that footage, and by the way, like I'm getting the haters, but it's all consistent. Like on my Instagram, I'm getting the haters, and it's all like written in the same style. When you go to their pages, they all look like fake accounts. Like they are paying people. Like there's so much of a business strategy or like a social media like strategy behind this to actually then, like turn this into a psychological war in many ways, because then the more they show that, people that are pro-Israel are afraid to speak up because they're afraid to they're intimidated. It's like bullying basically. So if I even post anything and then I start getting the nasty stuff, then I start getting bullied. It's like a bully. So in a way, they created a strategy where bullying would be a part of it, online bullying. And then so then that's like psychological coercion for the people that do want to support Israel, right? So there's a lot of things at play here. So, and at the same time, there's 16 million Jewish people in the world approximately, and there's like 1.8 or 2 billion Muslims in the world. And so there's also just a sheer like volume, not that every single person is like anti-Semitism. It's more that there is just I think there's just a volume. Like there's just a lot of strategy involved in this. I mean, even like how open America has been as a country and letting people in in the borders, right? And there's so much. I mean, there's so much stuff that is political, but I think that if Jewish people could almost, in a way, and this is what a leadership coach would say, is grace. Like knowing that there's a bigger psychological global thing happening, and even allies are afraid. Jewish people are afraid. So many Jewish people don't speak up and don't talk about it, right? And
Oh
so
my God, it's
having grace.
crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
grace means forgiving others even when you feel they don't deserve it. And that's a big, big, big word in our faith, in the Christian faith, is forgive us our trespasses, for those who trespassed against us, right? Like, so it's all about forgiveness so that we can actually have the energy and the fuel to keep out there and keeping up this support and this leadership work that I feel like every Jewish person is really called to step into
You
right
know,
now.
it that might be part of, quote, the God's bomb that went off. Maybe this was an awakening for everyone. There's a lot wrong with society. There's a lot wrong in North America, and I don't want to talk about Middle East because I don't live there. I spent a lot of time in Israel, but I can't speak to what their problems are politically and so forth. But I think that there's a lot wrong in North America. And maybe this is going to, the positive part of me feels that maybe we'll get some kind of correction here. It's going to take a while, but we need to start to pivot. We see what's going on the university campuses, and it's appalling. I mean, the idea that you could have people walking around with swastikas and like Nazi symbols, and I mean, that to me is
Right.
insanity.
And by the way, that's also part of Hamas's strategy, right? Is they know how triggering even seeing a swastika is. And so, and again, Jewish people are going to be high empaths, right? They're like, they've been through a lot in history. And so again, it is like back to the divorce scenario, right? It's like they are touching every single weakness and sensitivity of yours. And so again, we can be emotional. We have permission to do it for like a year if you want to, but at a certain point, my role in this, I think that there's various dimensions of all of this, but when I step into my profession and what my business does, I'm like, I'm going to pull you out of that emotional roller coaster and try to fill your cup back up so that you could step back out there in your power and in your and in like the truth of who you are, right? Which is like, this is a community that has been very successful, who's been very resilient, whose intelligence is off the charts, right? I mean, and so I think that, I know it does, every bomb that ever gets thrown on us never makes sense when you're in it, but like when time passes, you're going to look back and you're going to see, wow, like as painful as it has been, this was for us. This was because we're meant to create a better future out of this. And like there's a whole like I think 2 Corinthians 4:18 I think says like it's like, don't focus on what is seen, like trust what is unseen. Like so much of having faith is believing in the invisible. By the way, what is your faith? I know you're Jewish, but are you like are you religious Jewish, or what?
It's interesting you say that.
Well,
So I
I sense a
was,
level of conservativeness,
yes. Oh, conservatism. Yeah.
yeah.
So I was raised Reform. So Reform Judaism would be considered the least religious, with very traditional parents and extremely traditional grandparents. But my parents decided that they were going to be more hippie-ish, and they wanted to raise us more traditionally and not religious. But we were very traditional growing up, so we had all the traditions. And as I had my children, I was leaning more towards conservative Judaism, a little bit more religious, still with the traditions, but I was really following a specific rabbi who was a leader who I thought was very current and courageous, and I wanted to be part of his congregation. So that's why we went sort of more the conservatism route. My sister is ultra Orthodox. She's incredibly observant. And she's stepped into this in the last few years. So she's taught me a lot about Judaism, which I always thought I knew everything, and I'm still learning, which is really interesting. You ask my children, they'll say, we're not religious at all.
And it's interesting,
Right?
now that I really think about all of my Jewish friends, it is like they could be hardcore conservative or hardcore liberal and they're okay about their politics. But when it comes to, like, in a way, I generally, I feel like many of them are very reserved, when it comes to
Mhm.
hardcore activism, and it's
Mhm.
like now that I'm thinking about it. And, but I would say that, as it's just interesting what this war is, like, again, I think that it's very, vocation at the end of the day means calling. I don't know, like if you think about vocation and job, and I think everybody vocationally, and also vocally, I think perhaps this is actually waking up the Jewish community in a way to put that reserved to the side, that trait, and really stand up for yourself in a new way. The other thing I was going to say too is you've been a reporter.
Wow.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, what you just said, because I
Right?
think, and I know you're going to talk about my news background, but I just said this last night, that I'm happy I'm not working in news and I'm not in a newsroom right now, because I think I would have a nervous breakdown. I see the reporting. I see the way things are convoluted and so misinformed. And that's coming from the top. It's coming from the very top, and how it gets filtered down to reporters, and then the news is put out there. And I could not be an advocate at all. And even in my 20 years in a newsroom, I tried to be an advocate. I would try to say, well, you can't really say it that way. You can't really write it that way. That's not really appropriate.
Well,
Now I wouldn't be able to even get a word in edgewise. But I feel, after speaking with you now, that My superpower has always been my voice.
Right.
Always. It's always been my voice. I, I don't know any other way to use it, but just to communicate. And there has been many times in the last several weeks where I'm about to say something and I stop. I don't give a shit if I get canceled anymore. Who's going to cancel me? I'm Jewish. They've already tried to cancel me. I just don't want anybody. I just don't want anybody to hurt me, come for me, or hurt my children. I don't want to be targeted. That's what I worry about. I don't want someone to see me walking down the street, walking my dog, out with my family, and target me or my family. That's my biggest concern, which is bananas to me.
Well, I have the same
Absolutely
concern.
bananas to me.
Because I'm
For
very,
sure you do.
because I like show where my kids go to school, and ever since then, I've like even looking at my, like address and my location, I definitely, there is a fear, but um, courage, there's a definition. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's just caring so much that for something that the care outweighs your fear. And that's what has happened for me. And that's how I would inspire everybody. And I actually think that there's so many messages, leadership messages that I want to, support this community with. And that's why the Sunday, December 10th, I'm
I was just going to ask you.
and it's
Talk
not
to
even,
me about
I'm not
Sunday.
actually a religious person. I am a person of faith, but like my books, everything's about leadership, culture, social impact, and like just like inspiring change makers. And so, but this is what, I would just say that like I just want to pour into the Jewish people right now to again turn to really now vocally and vocationally just feel so empowered that you're not even filled with fear anymore, because what you care about just exceeds the fear. And when you start advocating and turning your platform into something that can affect this change, it won't even feel like work, because your passion is going to completely overwhelm you. Because this is hitting your heart, like that heart feeling will supersede, what your mind is telling you. And that is what I feel right now. That is what I feel. And honestly, I one of the messages I want to do is how I think that people have created lives in this 21st century that is so driven by control and certainty and safety in a very, very limited way, like the corporate job, or show up this way and look perfect, like this addiction to wanting to be productive all the time and be perfect and have it all together. And nobody has it all together. Perfectionism doesn't exist. And so
No.
this is also a time to step into our radical authenticity and creativity. And I also, which is part of my wholeness coaching and message anyway, we need to, if we're always trying to control, like, okay, well, what am I going to say? And like, I don't want to do this, because then like our world is small. But if you give the control to God, and you're like, I'm going to do this because this is what my heart and my soul tell me to do, then your world becomes limitless, right? When you put God in charge instead of like your mind and like trauma, in terms of what box you're going to put yourself into, which is how, a huge amount of people, right? Successful people in our generation, Gen Xers, which is what I am, older millennials, baby boomers. I mean, we've had to just create these, like, we have to look perfect. We can't make noise. We can't like, get canceled, right? And like, that's what culture and leadership systems have created for us. And so this is a time, I think, for God to like say, you don't need to like, it's going to get so bad. I'm going to break you down and break you through. Right. So now it's like we're being called to create, and we're being called to turn our platforms into really true, whole authenticity.
I'm blown away by you. I'm actually blown away by you. Everything that you're
And I
saying
was going to say,
resonates.
and you're probably because of the decades that you worked in journalism, and especially if you're on television and you're there to like you share the news, right? So think about that, right? Like your entire wiring is basically put on the makeup, say things perfectly, don't be too, polarizing, and don't say the wrong thing, right?
Right.
Or like, and how many
Oh my
women
God.
get these
It's
roles?
so ingrained.
How many
It's
Jewish
so
women
ingrained.
get those roles to actually be a broadcaster, right? So you've grown up in a place where, you've had to just so, like cater yourself, right? And like just position yourself and your reputation. Like we've had to manage and uphold, right? To get that job, especially as women, especially as a Chinese person, as a Jewish person, as a Black person, as a gay person, right? And so to actually even get the opportunity to get that safety and that provision and that opportunity to have a better life, and provide for our children better than our parents did, right? Because of the history they come from. And so we're sort of conditioned to, to conform.
Tell
And so
me, I want to hear about your interfaith service and what you're leading on Sunday. Because you've been so generous with your time and we've been talking for so long. I could talk to you all day, and I hope we do talk again. I hope you come
who I
back and
am. I
talk
mean,
to
you're
me again.
experiencing, if you were literally on a session with me, like this would be our conversation. I mean, this is
No,
what
I feel so empowered right now. I do. I feel
really,
very
really, I'm
mhm.
feeling called. I was like, I didn't mean this was not a part of my like strategic plan for 2023 and planning for 2024, but again, you gotta like putting God in control and letting go of our plans, which is so hard to do. Wait, but I planned for the perfect holiday vacation,
Right, of course.
for
Yeah.
the perfect Hanukkah. By the way, happy Hanukkah.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
so it is like we got to sort of, allow the messiness and give God control. But basically, He's just put on my heart to gather and convene all faiths, and or just people, right? Just people that are having emotional roller coasters right now and lack clarity of like how to show up or what to say or what to do. I don't even know how anybody can be thinking about anything else, honestly, right now. It's even as a non-Jewish person, but at the same time, I think also a lot of people like put a bubble around themselves to protect their mental health, but there's healthy bubbles and unhealthy bubbles. That's a different podcast interview. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so this Sunday, December 10th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. I know your audience will probably hear this after Sunday, but
No,
hopefully
no,
this.
no. We're gonna drop it today,
Oh,
and
cool.
I'll promote it all weekend, and I know that you'll share tidbits
It's
of
going to be this conversation. Literally, I'm
yes.
going to be pouring into people, and so much of what I'm sharing, whatever people are listening to in this episode with you, I'm going to be having a more, just more spiritual message sharing. And I think where I want to go, and I'm very spontaneous and like spiritual and like, and I really honestly, I sometimes I gather all of my speaking points like 1 to 2 hours in advance. And it's just like God sort of just speaks to me. So it
Of
will be
course.
pretty spiritual and spontaneous in that way. But that's what this podcast has been, right? And um,
Mhm. And I'm
it's
grateful for it. I want to know how people can find you. How can they find you if they want to reach out to
yeah,
you and listen to
claudiachan has
you?
is the first place to go. And then Instagram right now is just follow me there because that's where I'm pretty much at. I feel like
You're
24 hours.
very
By the way, just to close on a funny note, when it started happening and I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning and I was up like just I was on my phone more so than usual. My husband actually approached me and he's like, "Are you having an affair?" He's like,
oh
"You're
my
showing
God.
all the signs of infidelity right now." And anyway, I'm like, I promise you, like, look at my phone. Anyway, it was to the point where, and he's had to set boundaries. He's like, 11 o'clock, the social media is done.
Oh yeah, has
But
to
I
come
think
off. Yeah,
everybody can
it's not
resonate,
good.
right? It feels like everybody's right now. It's
Tell
so
me
hard.
before we say goodbye, if there is one thing that you could say to people listening or watching this who want very much to be on the right side of history and don't realize what the right side of history is just yet,
This is what I
what would you tell them to do?
this is what I truly believe. I think that when it comes to the Israel Hamas war, and with 8 billion-ish people on the planet, and I know million, like I think it's like I don't know how many million are Christian, but I do believe that predominant people in our world population supports the Jewish community, and they just haven't externally publicly voiced. And And so I would probably just leave with the message of one of my favorite pastors, Erwin McManus, would say is the future belongs to those with the courage to create it. The future belongs to those with the courage to create it. And to really plug into your internal like humanity, leadership, character, values, and ask yourself, what is the right thing to do? And I'm not saying, become a influencer on social media, but where can you publicly, even if it's on your team, even if it's in your like PTA meeting with other moms, bring up the conversation. We need to spread, we need to talk about it, and care more about doing the right thing than what people are going to think about you. Because at the end of the day, at the end of our life, what's going to matter is who you were. And did I truly live and align my life with the values that I've stood for at the end of my life? Like that is what I would say to people. And plug into that courage.
Plug into your courage. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much. This has been, it's been a hard conversation, but it was joyful for me. You actually made it joyful. So I appreciate you and I appreciate this.
Just as much as I might have filled yours. And because this is actually my first interview. This is my first interview about this conversation, since October 7th. So, just thank you for holding the space and hosting this.
Thank you so much. And I hope everybody comes on Sunday. I do. It's going to be beautiful. Thank you, Claudia.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will see you again next time.